All right, let me know what questions you have.
So my questions are all over the place, so it doesn't have flow, and I'm sorry
That's
about that.
okay. Ask away.
Okay, so first things, um, if my interests are about mental health, addiction, substance use, should I go with a PhD about public health PhD, or should I go with health behavior and preventative medicine?
I would apply for all types of programs like that. That's what I did. I applied to mostly public health PhD programs, but some of them were more sort of behavioral health or research or sort of health behavior, social behavioral research. If there wasn't a school of public health, but also like within schools of public health, I usually would apply to departments of like social and behavioral health, which is what I did for Harvard. So, I would say that it's not really about like there's no limit to like what types of population health, public health, behavioral health, preventative health. It's really about like does are there faculty like in that department in that school that are doing similar research to what you are
Okay.
doing so that you can have potential mentors.
Okay, so you just um one advice from other researchers were get your name published before you go into PhD. And my only way of getting my name published, uh, beside my master thesis, which will be published, is working as a research assistant. Are there any other jobs that I should search for?
I think research assistantships are great in terms of helping with your PhD application. I do want to say that you don't have to have a publication in order to be admitted into a PhD program. It helps definitely, but it's not a requirement. So I think the fact that you even did a master's thesis, wrote a master's thesis, and plan to try to publish that, and you just showcase that in your personal statement, and you say, I did a research master's thesis and am in the process of or have already submitted this to be published, then it actually shows because they care more about your potential to publish, not necessarily that you've had a ton of publications because you're still starting out. So that would be kind of like it's the potential to publish.
Okay, so because in Greece there's limited funding, so each researcher should also teach. Is there any way I can only be a researcher, not in Greece, of course, but in other countries? Or do I have to be a lecturer or something else as well?
Yeah, so a lot of the way that PhD programs are funded in the US is that you are expected to work part-time, and that can be done through teaching and being a teaching assistant. And some places will also count research hours, working in a research lab, usually with your mentor, as that kind of like part-time research work to help fund your stipend and your program costs. So I think it just depends on like the program, whether how flexible they are with the teaching versus research assistantship. So that just depends. I know at Harvard, you had the option to do either.
Okay, so I shouldn't be searching on my own outside jobs.
No, that you can
Okay,
figure out once you get into the program and you're figuring out your funding and et cetera. Uh,
okay.
Figure that out then.
So let me just see real quick. Mm, So if I really like writing, which is part of why I also write like research because I could write for the first time and it was really good to search and collect and mash them all together. Um, is there any other job I can do as after PhD if I don't want to continue with research? Maybe medical writer, I guess.
Yeah, so I mean, it's great that you love writing. That is a huge part of getting a PhD. I also had a similar experience as you, whereas I thought, maybe you didn't think this, but at least for me, I thought that I was a terrible writer. And then when I started doing more research and scientific writing, I was like, oh, this is like so much more straightforward than creative writing or like, I don't know. It was just made more sense to me to just be like, okay, here's the methods, here's the results, listing it out, being straightforward. So I like scientific writing. There are definitely other careers besides just research and academia. You can go into consulting, you can go into industry, healthcare, startups. You can do research at a nonprofit or a government agency or a think tank, or, you know, possibilities are really endless. So don't feel like you have to stay in an academic or a research position. But if you do like writing, I would, and you like, if you end up liking writing grants and all that stuff, I think, yeah, all careers will have lots of writing in it. Don't you worry. I feel like that's one of the things that people enjoy doing the least. So if that's something you enjoy and is your strength, I think you will have no problem finding your next step
Okay,
after
that's
graduating.
nice. Do you think the life of researcher is competitive? Like you feel like you have too much pressure to publish the next great thing or whatever?
So for me, I think I mean, this is just me personally. So I feel like the pressure is like in terms of getting grants and getting funding. And that's not something you really, or I really thought about at all until I graduated from my PhD program and became a postdoc. When I was a PhD student, it was laser focused on just getting as many publications as I could. And I got really good at that. But I feel like I didn't really learn how to navigate the grant world, which is like also very tricky because you're basically asking for tons and tons and tons, like million, like I think one of my grants was like almost $1 million, from the NIH to fund your work. So, in that sense, I feel the pressure of being cutting edge, innovative, and really having to be a very convincing, succinct, impactful writer. Um, and feeling the pressure for getting grants. Not so much for paper publishing because I feel like that, it's a little bit, at least for me, it feels less competitive than the grant writing world.
Yeah. And how do you get the skills to write grants? Because I don't think there's anything I don't know.
Yeah, so again,
It,
that's not something you need to worry about now. It's once you get into the PhD program. So there were like there's one course that I took that was required for my department that sort of taught you how to write a grant. And then your dissertation process also sort of teaches you how to write like a proposal. Um, but I think, the only way to really get experience for applying to grants is to actually apply to grants. Like you can do so many sort of practice proposals, take courses, but like it's different when you have to like learn how to navigate a portal or a system of a different organization, and then how you have to work with your school's admin and finance department, and how that relates with the application. There's a lot of moving pieces. So for me, like I felt like actually applying for like an F-31 or maybe some foundation grants and actually going through the process is how you learn, and sort of unfortunately struggling through it and figuring it out. And that's the really the best way. And I've just been right now as a postdoc applying to as many grants as possible. And like, it's funny, like each time it still feels like a huge effort to submit a grant. And I'm like, oh my God, I mean, I know this is supposed to get easier, but it's a lot of work. And I think the best way to get experience is to keep submitting, and that muscle will start to build.
okay. I've seen that maybe you like it that much. You research about e-cigarettes in adolescents. So, for example, if I pass my PhD degree and all the stuff, do I have to be in the same, I guess, let me put it in another way. Should I only research some things? Like, can I research different things?
Yeah, so you are not tied to what you do your PhD, your dissertation on. It can be a good foundation, and I think it's good to sort of study that. I mean, I guess what I'm trying to say is like the answer to your question is no, you don't have to stay in that exact same field. I think it's good to branch out. I think it's also good to see like what kind of research projects are being funded, because that's how you know like what where the field is going. So you don't want to sort of just stay in your own area. You want to see like, okay, these types, maybe e-cigarettes are were really important when I was doing my PhD, but now people care a lot more about fentanyl. So I'm going to use the skills that I built to study, e-cigarette use among adolescents, and then now use that similar skill set to understand, fentanyl overdoses among adolescents. So I think it's okay to pivot, very okay to pivot and take your skill set and address sort of the most important issues, at the time.
And how do you know what are the top issues at the time? Just searching through PubMed and see what is new.
So I think it's like from a combination of just like the kind of passive stuff that is going on. It's like talking to mentors and hearing what they're seeing in research in the field. I have publication alerts that like send me new articles on certain topics. Um,
Mhm.
so I know kind of like what other people are doing and newly publishing. Um, when putting together grant ideas, especially for the NIH, it's good to talk to program officers. They might give you a little bit of insight as to like what each division is sort of looking for, in terms of like cutting edge ideas. So, and then going to conferences and just like hearing what other people are presenting on and what their work is on, it all contributes to sort of like your understanding of like where the field is going. And that's kind of how I decided to bring in sort of cannabis use and the co-use of cannabis and tobacco into all of my work. And then I'm also hearing more about, yeah, like what you mentioned, like mental health being important. How do I weave that in? So I'm always constantly trying to adapt based on interactions that I have with other people in the field and what I'm seeing, in the literature and all of the above.
Okay, so what do you wish you had known before starting your PhD?
I get this question a lot, and honestly, like go I don't really know what I would have said to myself. I think the biggest piece of advice is just to like almost just be prepared for unexpected twists and turns. I guess what is it? Expect the unexpected. I'm someone who is really like set on timelines. Like if I have a schedule and a timeline and I want to adhere to it, and if it doesn't go the way that I want, I get really upset, really stressed, and really frustrated. And you need flexibility and adaptability to be successful as a researcher and an academic. And that's just something that I feel like I'm working on in general and wish I had I'm continuing to work on. And I wish I had started working on that sooner rather than later. In my training as a PhD student, I feel like I was very sort of regimented in my ways. And I'm now still to this day trying to work on being more open-minded, and when things don't go my way, like not to be, not to get feel it, like not to let setbacks really get to me, and just to continue to be persistent. That's the key thing. Maybe just knowing how important it is to just be persistent, and to know that like you need to just like have faith that things will work out in the end, no matter kind of like how they're feeling in the moment.
So one other advice I got is you have to have a chemistry with your mentor. But if you're applying to different PhDs, how do you know you have that chemistry? Through the interview or just
Yeah, so you saw
Like,
my blog, right, with my step-by-step guide for applying to programs. So on there, I recommend everyone to try to connect with faculty members, at least one faculty member in each program before submitting the application and having some kind of conversation. And that will usually give you an idea if you have that rapport, that connection, and might work well. I know it's just one short phone call, but usually you can tell and how the conversation goes, and you might and that like even a short phone call can give you a lot of insight that you can't get from just like reading a profile online. So I really recommend trying to have a Zoom or phone call with potential faculty at each program that you're applying to.
okay.
Are you more asking like what was my life like as a PhD student versus a postdoc? Is that the question?
Maybe, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Because I'm trying to figure out what's the difference in job requirements and what I can do after my degree for the research.
Yeah. So I would say that my lifestyle is pretty similar to like how I was as a PhD student, but I'm writing more grants. That's really what it feels like. I'm still teaching, I'm still mentoring, I'm still working on, different research projects with different research groups. I still have a main mentor that I meet with and report to. It's just at a different institution now. And then, like I said, I just write and submit a lot more grants. And I'm a little bit more intentional about that. But my lifestyle is pretty much similar. Like I get to build my own schedule around sort of my set course times and meeting times. I still do my hobbies. I teach my fitness classes. I have meetings. I mentor students. So, um, yeah, my life feels just pretty similar in terms of the structure, I would say. But yeah, more grant writing. And I think, after you do your PhD, most people do end up going to do a postdoc because it's sort of like an extended time, protected time that you get to just keep sort of doing what you're doing before taking that next leap into your career, whether it's you know, in academia or in industry or something else.
I applied to research assistant jobs from for different universities, and most of them are going to have interview. So I want to know what are some good questions to ask them as well.
Yeah, so I think definitely ask, what types of projects you'll be working on, specifically. Have them even share some of the grants that they've written, so that you have an idea of what projects you'll be working on and what kinds of like day-to-day projects and tasks you'll have. I would ask about potential for publishing and if you have opportunities to first author manuscripts, like I would be really, show that that's something that you would be interested in leading and because you hope to go to grad school. So that's something I would definitely ask about. If you want grant writing experience, you can ask about that as well. But I would really ask sort of like what research skills would you build from this position? And I would also be very upfront with them that you are hoping to apply to PhD programs in the near future and, want to set yourself up for success in applying. And because of that, you are going to be really, dedicated to their research projects and moving them forward. Obviously don't make it just about you, but like, how are you going to help them and how are they going to help you?
So as a research assistant, I'm allowed to write the introduction of the publication. And is it considered a co-author like that, or just managed data gives me gets my name published?
Yeah, so that's something you would work out with your boss or your ma lab manager or whoever your faculty at the lab that you join, kind of what they require for co-authors and first authors. So if there are opportunities for you to draft an entire manuscript and do analyses and be the first author, and that's something you're interested in, you should definitely say that. If you want opportunities to co-author and, be maybe second, third, middle author and help support analyses, help support writing a manuscript, I would also be upfront and clear that that's experience you'd want to gain.
Okay. I think that's all the questions I had. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
It's
Of
really
course.
helpful because I had limited access to information. So it was a great help. So thank you.
Of course. I'm glad that I could be helpful and I wish you the best in taking your next steps in your research
Thank
journey.
you.
I'm always here if you have any questions.